In this video, I will walk through an example of Quiz 2, the Cost Benefit Analysis quiz. This is the simplified version, which will be the version you'll see on our quiz. Here's the Aldridge Corporation. They have a project. They're assessing their cost of capital is 8.5%, and their payback period cutoff is 2 years. Here's the cash flows from the projects. It costs $575 up front. $575,000 up front, and they get $322,000 evenly throughout the first year and $336,000 evenly throughout the second year. You need to calculate the net present value, the discounted payback, and discuss internal rate return. To set this up, what you need to do is put the titles starting with time, the cash flows, the discounted cash flows, the cumulative cash flows, actually cumulative discounted cash flows, and then the percentage of year used for the payback. And so we'll start with time 0. When you start with time 0, you will show your $575,000 going out at time 0. The discount of that is the same because it's time 0, and the cumulative is negative 575. The first year you receive $322,000, but it's evenly throughout the year. If we use a 1 here, that means the entire $322,000 comes exactly at the end of year 1. Since it's evenly throughout the year, we'll just make the simplifying assumption that it all happens in 6 months. And then for the second year, our cash flow is $336,000, and since it's evenly throughout the second year, we'll assume it all happens in 18 months. If we use 2, it would assume it all happens in 24 months at the end of 2 years, but we'll use 1.5 as a simplifying assumption. We now need to discount those cash flows. Our discount rate is 8.5%, so we just take for that year 1, we take $322,000 and divide by 1 plus the discount rate, 8.5%, and raise that to 0.5. And when you do that, you should get $309,130. We do the same thing with that second year's cash flow, except for here we raise it to 1 plus the discount rate raised to the 1.5, and we should get $297,300. Notice that I'm rounding to dollars. There's no reason to put pennies on there, given that these are forecasts anyway. We're not that accurate. And so when we do that, we should get a present value, net present value, by adding those 3 together. I'll do that when we get question A, but I recommend you set up the entire table first before you start answering the questions. The cumulative cash flow, you take the 575 deficit that you begin the year with, you add the discounted cash flow for that year, so $575,000 negative plus the present value $309,130 for the first year. That leaves you a deficit of $265,870. Given that it's a deficit, given that it's negative, that means you need all of that year's benefit as part of the discounted payback, and you're still not positive, so that's why it's 100%. The only time it's not 100% is if this turns positive. The next year, our cumulative payback will be $31,430. That equals the deficit we started with, $265,870, plus this year's cumulative. That $31,430 will actually be our net present value, but we'll calculate that again separately. How much of this year that we need? That 89%, it's 89%. Where did that 89% come from? 89% is the deficit of the previous year, $265,870, divided by the benefit of this year, $297,300, and it's 89%. Now you might say, well, it's a negative number, but we ignore the sign. It's the absolute value. We started with the deficit of $265,870. We produced $297,300. So where in the year did our net present value turn from negative to positive? and it would be about 89% of the way through the year. So the first question asks, calculate the project's net present value, and would you accept a project? And so when we do that, we say the net present value is 575 deficit, $575,000 up front, plus the 309,130 in the first year, plus the 297,300 in the second year, and that equals 31,430, which should also be your cumulative discounted cash flow. So we say the project is acceptable because the net present value is greater than 0. The second question asks, what is the discounted payback? And based on that, do you accept a project? So our discounted payback is, we've already calculated. We used all of the first year, 89% of the second year. So it's 189%, or converted to years, 1.89 years. So the project is acceptable because the 1.89 years discounted payback is less than the firm's cutoff of 2 years. The last questions ask you to define, but quickly define. It can be a really quick answer. I'll show you the answer I use. Quickly define internal rate of return, and is this project acceptable based on the internal rate of return? And what we say here is the internal rate of return is the discount rate that, when used to discount the cash flows, produces a net present value of exactly 0. Now, I'm not asking you to calculate the internal rate of return, but you'll know that in this case, given that the net present value is greater than 0, using a discount rate of 8.5%, remember we use the firm's cost of capital, we must know that the internal rate of return must be greater than 8.5% because the net present value is positive. And thus a project is acceptable because the internal rate of return is greater than the cost of capital. And that's what we're looking for here on this question. I'll provide the Word document with the suggested answer and along with this video. Thank you.